The sky was heavy that day. Thick clouds hung low, and the wind carried a strange silence. Amir stood outside the office building, still staring at the white envelope in his hands. His fingers trembled, though he didn't notice. Inside the envelope were just a few words that ended everything he had worked for over the last 6 years. "We regret to inform you." That's all he remembered reading. After that, the words blurred. His ears rang. His chest felt like it was closing in. He didn't go home right away. He walked. Miles passed under his feet without thought. The streets were full of people, but he felt invisible, like a ghost in his own life. Every step he took felt heavier than the last. His mind screamed questions he couldn't answer. Why me? What did I do wrong? How do I tell my family? By the time he reached his small apartment, the sky had turned darker, and so had his thoughts. That night, unable to sleep, he opened his laptop and searched something without thinking. How to stay strong when everything falls apart. The first name that appeared was Marcus Aurelius. The words beside it read, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He paused. Something about that sentence. It didn't promise comfort. It didn't tell him everything would be okay. It just told the truth. And for the first time that day, Amir felt still. He read the quote again. He didn't understand all of it, but it lit a small fire in him. Not hope, no, he didn't feel hopeful. He felt something else. Something quieter. Like the start of a long breath after holding it in for too long. In that silent room, under the dim yellow light, he whispered to himself. The next morning, Amir sat on the edge of his bed, holding a worn-out notebook and a pen. He had written the name Marcus Aurelius at the top of the first page. Below it, just one question. Can a broken man learn to be calm? He didn't have the answer. But something in his chest told him to try. He started reading Meditations, one short passage at a time. The words were old, strange even, but they felt like they were written for him. You cannot control what happens, one line read. You can only control how you respond. At first, he scoffed. How can someone stay calm when life throws you to the ground? It felt impossible. But he kept reading. Days passed. He began to wake up early, not because he had to, but because something inside him wanted to. He started with a small routine. Read one page. Sit in silence for 5 minutes. Then write what he felt. No matter how ugly or weak. One morning, he wrote, "I cannot change losing my job. But I can change what I do next." The words were shaky, but honest. Then, one cold evening, the water heater broke. Normally, Amir would have cursed or called someone in a rush. This time, he stood in the cold shower, breathing slowly. It was painful, but he stayed. Not to prove anything. Just to feel what it meant to face discomfort and stay. And something strange happened. After the cold passed, a calm followed. He began to test stoicism in small ways, holding his tongue when he was angry, walking instead of complaining about traffic, turning off his phone during meals. These weren't big victories. But they were his. And deep inside, something was shifting. He wasn't healed. The pain of failure still visited him at night. But he was learning to sit with it. Not run. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the phone rang. Amir picked it up, expecting a friend or maybe a job call. But the voice on the other end was shaking. It was his younger sister. "Amir. Mom collapsed. We're at the hospital." Time stopped. His breath caught in his throat. He didn't speak. He just grabbed his coat and ran. The streets blurred as he rushed toward the hospital, heart pounding like a drum. The fear was louder than any thought. He arrived to find his sister pacing the waiting room, red-eyed. His mother was inside, unconscious. The doctors said it might be her heart. They wouldn't know anything for hours. Amir felt the old panic return, the storm in his chest, the helplessness. He wanted to scream, to punch the wall, to fall apart. But he didn't. He sat down beside his sister, held her hand, and breathed. In his mind, he repeated what he had learned. I cannot control this moment, but I can control who I am in it. He stayed still. He didn't pretend he wasn't scared, but he didn't let fear own him. When his sister broke down, he listened. When she couldn't speak, he got her water. He was present, not perfect, but present. Hours passed. The doctor returned with news. It was serious, but not fatal. She needed rest, care, and time. Relief flooded Amir's body like warm light. But he knew this was not the end of challenges. It was only the beginning. That night, as he sat beside his mother's hospital bed, watching her chest rise and fall, he realized something powerful. He could not stop bad things from happening. But he could stop them from breaking him. And for the first time, he believed that was enough. Weeks passed. Amir's mother was healing slowly. Life was quieter now. Still uncertain, but not as painful. Amir had time to think. And that's when the hardest question began to rise in his mind. What do I really want now? He had spent years chasing a career, hoping it would bring meaning. But when it was gone, meaning disappeared with it. Now, with the silence that followed crisis, he had to choose what kind of life would he build from here. He sat on the balcony one evening, watching the sunset alone. The streets below moved with noise and rush, but his heart was still. He opened his journal and wrote one line. I don't want a life built on luck. I want a life built on strength. That night, he made a choice. He applied for a new job, not just for money, but to serve something that aligned with values, not ego. He started volunteering at a small shelter on weekends, helping kids who didn't have support. He found it hard at first. They didn't always listen. Some even mocked him. But he returned every week. He chose to live a little harder. A little simpler. He said no to things that didn't matter. Yes to things that built character. No more chasing comfort. No more hiding from effort. One evening, an old friend asked him, "You've changed. Why are you doing all this?" Amir smiled. Because I finally know that I'm not in control of life. But I am in control of who I am. That was the difference. The world still threw problems at him. But he no longer panicked. He chose to respond, not react. To act with patience, not fear. To keep moving forward, even when the path was rough. He was becoming someone new not through luck or talent, but through choice. 1 year later, Amir stood on the same street where he once walked alone with that white envelope in his hands. But today, he wasn't broken. He wasn't lost. He was calm. The company he now worked for wasn't as big or fancy, but every day, he walked in with purpose. He had grown into a role where he helped others, not just as a job, but as a mission. His co-workers came to him for advice, not because he knew all the answers, but because he listened, and he spoke with clarity. At home, his mother was healthy again. His sister had found strength through his example. And Amir? He woke up each day with a kind of fire, not loud, but steady. He still read from meditations. Still journaled. Still faced cold showers when he needed to remind himself, comfort is not the goal. One evening, a young man at the shelter he volunteered at asked him, "Weren't you ever scared you'd fail again?" Amir paused. "I was scared," he said. "I still am, sometimes. But I learned that strength isn't about never falling. It's about who you become when you rise." He looked out the window, then added quietly, "I've failed. I've lost. I've been scared and angry and small. But every time I faced that pain, I came back stronger. Because I didn't let it change who I am, I let it reveal who I could be." That night, he wrote one last line in his journal. You don't become stoic in calm waters. You become stoic in the storm. Amir didn't need life to be easy anymore. He just needed to stay steady. And now, no matter what came, he knew he would stand. Not because he was perfect, but because he had become unshakable from within.